Throughout recorded history, mankind has dreamt of building the perfect society, an empire that might somehow satisfy the needs of every man. An ancient legend cast the shadows of one such society that is said to have existed long ago. 2,500 years ago, the Greek philosopher Plato set down a dialogue called the Critias. He recounted the story of an ancient Greek poet and statesman named Solon. Solon had journeyed to Egypt in search of wisdom to help the government of his beloved Greece. The Greeks had been beset with factions and troubles, so Solon took counsel from the priests of the city of Sais. An old priest told him, "O Solon, Solon, you Greeks are never anything but children. There is no old opinion handed down among you, nor any science that is white with age." The old priest then proceeded to tell him the story of the lost city of Atlantis. In the centuries that would follow, scholars and researchers have debated whether Plato's Atlantis was intended to be an account of real history or simply an allegorical myth. Some even suggest that Atlantis was really the antediluvian world, the wicked society destroyed by the wrath of God in the great flood of Noah. In the 20th century, Plato's account was further supported by Masonic philosopher Manly P. Hall. Hall claimed that Atlantis had once been a vast and mighty empire that extended to the whole world, a philosophic commonwealth of nations that one day was destined to be rebuilt. But who would rebuild it? And exactly who was Manly P. Hall?
Manly P. Hall was probably the most highly esteemed occultist and Freemason of the 20th century.
He understood the secrets of the ages long before he ever joined the Masons.
Was really the foremost authority on the occultist side of Freemasonry, the deep, dark side of Freemasonry, the one that most Masons never ascend to.
I can't really think of anybody close to him.
Manly P. Hall was one of the leading people within this whole other world that we talk about.
Hall authored over 200 books and is said to have given some 8,000 lectures on ancient philosophy. He is perhaps most remembered for his contribution to the mysterious Brotherhood of Masonry. Upon his death in 1990, the Scottish Rite Journal, a Masonic publication, noted that he was often called, quote, Masonry's greatest philosopher. Among his teachings was that contained in Masonry and all the secret orders was the ancient wisdom of lost Atlantis. Hall wrote that for more than 3,000 years, secret societies had been laboring to create a background of knowledge necessary to the establishment of an enlightened democracy among the nations of the world. According to Hall, these societies could be traced back to ancient Egypt and had for centuries known of a secret place hidden from the eyes of common men, a place that would one day be revealed. In the 17th century, as settlers were colonizing the New World, Sir Francis Bacon, the leader of secret societies in England, set down his classic work, The New Atlantis. While archaeologists and treasure hunters have searched the globe looking for the lost continent, 400 years ago, Bacon, like many of his contemporaries, believed that Atlantis was America itself.
Well, Bacon, to me, was really fundamental in the American colonizational scheme and its connection to the new Atlantis concept. He was trying to lay a foundation for what could be accomplished in the New World.
While the Atlantis of Plato was a mighty empire known for the philosophy of its kings, Bacon would write of a nation governed by scientific achievement, filled with marvels and wonders never before seen.
Bacon was talking about this new nation, talking about submarines, talking about unimaginable weapons of war, talking about flying machines and tall buildings. How did he come into possession of this knowledge?
Did Francis Bacon outline the course of the New World before its time? And if so, by what power was he inspired to do so? While there are no states or cities that bear his name, his mysterious influence has compelled some to call him the real and true founder of America.
His founding of America was really through other people who were following his work, following the program he'd laid out.
Bacon was the head of Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism.
He had a huge influence through being the chief of the Rosicrucian fraternity at the time. He had a huge influence on the birth of modern Freemasonry. And many of those Rosicrucians actually went into Freemasonry at that time to lift it up to its new level. And Freemasonry has a major influence on the founding of America.
While many of the early settlers came to work the land for the cause of religious freedom, there were with them secret societies who came to the New World with another agenda.
Secret societies came to America shortly after the Pilgrims arrived, and they were sent by a man named Sir Francis Bacon.
You get this very strange mixture of people, many of whom understood even then the advantage, spiritually and otherwise, to having secret orders.
Unless you understand the influence of the occult societies on the development of America, on the establishment of America, upon the course of America, why you get completely lost studying our history.
And they were the ones through which this work was being put into operation in England, in Europe, and eventually in America and the world.
So that America then could be used to lead the world into the philosophic empire. You understand that America was founded by Christians as a Christian nation. However, there were always those people on the other side who wanted to use America, use our military power and our financial power to establish enlightened democracies throughout the world and restore lost Atlantis.
Yeah, maybe Bacon had it right. Maybe Atlantis is not something yet to occur, but maybe it's occurring right now in America.
In his lifetime, Sir Francis Bacon referred to himself as the herald of a new age. He promoted a new universal order for the whole world. Can this be what early American founders referred to with the words Novus Ordo Seclorum, the new order of the ages? And does this vision affect America today?
When our founders declared a new order of the ages, they were acting on an ancient hope that is meant to be fulfilled.
As America marches forward, spreading democracy throughout the globe, is she merely promoting freedom or fulfilling an ancient plan? Is she following a course planned for centuries by men who believe she is chosen for a secret destiny? To understand the present and possibly the future, we look into the past as we unfold the secret mysteries of America's beginnings. Can America be the new Atlantis? The movie National Treasure revealed to many the role of Freemasons in the founding of America. Often seen as a shadowy organization with hidden agendas, Masonry was portrayed in a positive light. Was this coincidence, or could there have been something behind it?
I think there's probably a little something behind it.
The Freemasons among our founding fathers left us clues like these. The unfinished pyramid, the all-seeing eye. They're speaking to us through these.
Well, the movie National Treasure is probably the first film in many years that has given a positive spin to the Masonic Lodge. And essentially it seems to have been at least partially designed as kind of a propaganda piece for them.
They were basically trying to say that these people who have hidden this secret knowledge of whatever it was, the gold stash or whatever, the Masons, are basically good guys.
Because it makes them appear to be this sort of benign, shadowy group that's in the background protecting these important ancient secrets and also protecting this great, massive treasure.
It was fairly accurate in its Masonic elements.
You can tell whoever made the film either was a Mason, and of course there's a lot of Masons in Hollywood, or else had done a lot of research.
Screenwriter Jim Kauf, who developed the storyline for Disney Pictures, claims no Masonic connection, yet some researchers are not convinced.
Masons were involved in the writing of that, it seems to me, because then they tried to turn it around and, you know, say that that Freemasonry is a good thing, that it has these hidden secrets deep within it, and that someday will be revealed, and, you know, bring good things to America, etc.
Yet did the filmmakers accurately portray the real secrets of Masonry?
The thing I think that's unfortunate about the movie is, other than it kind of glamorizes the Masons, is that it makes it sound like the treasure of Masonry is monetary, that it's this enormous cachet of wealth and gold and jewels and urns and statues and whatever. And really that's not what the treasure of Masonry is. The treasure of Masonry is esoteric wisdom. It is what Masons believe. It is the secret of eternal life and immortality. And that's an entirely different thing.
Conspiracy theorists have suggested that the film was intended to mislead. But the question remains, if Masons were involved in the making of the film, what would motivate them to tell a story about a society sworn to secrecy?
I think Masons have been pretty desperate over the last couple decades. They've taken a lot of hits, due in at least part to my books, and their membership is declining fast. Men love secrets, and that's just a basic truism. And so if they advertise that through a popular movie, you know, maybe it would generate a little more interest.
On one level, the film, I think it does some good in that it does educate people about the origins of our country and the fact that the origins of our country was very much steeped in Masonry. But on the other hand, I think it misleads about the benign nature of Masonry's involvement. And also it misleads by defining the nature of what Masonry has been guarding for the last 3,000 years.
But what has Masonry been guarding for the last 3,000 years? The real history of the craft, as it is called, varies from one source to another, and is a continued thorn of controversy. Masons claim biblical origins dating back to Tubal-Cain, the first craftsman, as well as Nimrod, who built the Tower of Babel and founded the ancient city of Babylon. King Solomon plays an important role, as Masons are said to have been the builders of the Great Temple in Jerusalem. No less important is the influence of Gnosticism, sometimes called the mother of Masonry. According to Masonic historian Albert Mackey, Gnosticism is where Masonry gets the mysterious letter G, as seen here in the midst of the Masonic square and compass, a symbol that often adorns Masonic tombstones. Known for rejecting the biblical Gospels, the Gnostics claim to be the real Christians, an issue the apostles spoke vehemently against in the New Testament. The Gnostic Gospels have been promoted by writers like Elaine Pagels and celebrities such as Jane Fonda. It was the Gnostic teachings that formed the heart of Dan Brown's blockbuster book, The Da Vinci Code. The Gnostics were known to express a humanistic view of Christ, a view they are said to have exploited for the purpose of justifying their debauchery of women. Hence the tales of Jesus and his alleged relationship with Mary Magdalene, a view often attributed to the Gnostics and repeated in Brown's controversial book. but Masonry's most popular debates, especially with films like National Treasure and books such as The Da Vinci Code, Born in Blood, and Holy Blood, Holy Grail, seem to involve the mysterious Knights Templar, whose connection to Freemasonry is often seen at the Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland's capital city of Edinburgh. A place that not only reveals much about the Templars and Masonry, but within may be secrets to the founding of the New World. But whatever the connection or controversy, most Masons trace their craft back to the mysteries of ancient Egypt.
Egypt is like pretty much the proximate fountainhead of all esoteric mystery teaching.
After the example of the Egyptian craftsmen, the Masons carved their own imagery in the great structures of Europe. Secret signs and symbols were embedded into their work, the meaning of which was to be hidden from outsiders.
These were the craft masons who actually built the temples. If you look at European architecture, you know, all those big cathedrals in Europe, Cologne Cathedral in Germany, Notre Dame in Paris, Salisbury Cathedral in England, and all those beautiful cathedrals were all built around the 1200s and 1300s. And it was these masons who knew their business, and they wanted to keep their skills secret.
All the great cathedrals of Europe were built by stonemasons who had an understanding of esoteric lore, and they're basically riddles in stone.
When Masons came to America, they practiced their trade in the same way they had in Europe, embedding secret codes within the design and foundation of the American colonies. Some believe this may account for the geographic location of the 5 great Revolutionary War cities. In particular, Boston, New York, Baltimore, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. have all been built in perfect alignment along the eastern seaboard. Researcher Jim Allison believes this alignment may be a part of something greater.
Let me say this, I think it is very unlikely that the alignment is coincidental.
According to Allison, the alignment of cities and ancient sites are part of a series of great circles that encompass the Earth. These circles are supposedly like lines of power upon which significant sites are built.
The simplest example, the most obvious example of a great circle, though, is the equator, because it runs around the center of the Earth. It runs due east-west. Meridians of longitude, which run due north-south through the north and south poles, if you extend it all the way around, those are also great circles because they run through the center of the Earth.
Allison claims that mystical sites like the pyramids, Easter Island, the Mayan and Aztec cities are all built upon these great circles. In addition, one of these great circles contains the 5 cities that date back to the era of the American Revolutionary War.
Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Baltimore, New York City, and Boston are in fact aligned. They're fairly close together. The distance from Washington, D.C. to Boston is 400 miles. And as a result of that, you can see the alignment just on a flat map, because the curvature of the Earth is not so much over that distance to distort it. But on a three-dimensional map, it's even clearer.
But is this just a curious coincidence, or could there be some hidden meaning behind it? In the 1920s, an Englishman named Alfred Watkins noted a series of straight tracks or lines upon the Earth's surface that seemed to connect the ancient monuments and holy sites around the world.
What he found was that in a number of cases, a number of these monuments were aligned in dead straight lines that extended from a few miles to, in some cases, many miles. He coined the term ley lines to describe and to explain these alignments. Watkins believed that there are some type of grid lines that run through the earth, of lines of energy or magnetism or electromagnetism or some other kind of attraction over the earth. And that's what he described as ley lines. Watkins believed that the builders of these sites were aware of these lines that ran through the earth and that they intentionally built these monuments on these lines.
While Watkins' findings were not openly received by all, his views have been most often embraced by members of the esoteric community.
In the occult, there's this concept of ley lines, L-E-Y, which are lines of force that some people say are like the acupuncture points of the earth. And you always want to build things on a ley line. All of the great cathedrals of Europe are built upon these ley lines, which are like currents of power.
These currents of power are thought to have magical significance. Some believe they act as portals for spirits to travel to and from the ancient monuments that fall within these alignments. But the question remains, were such power lines important to the builders of early American cities? Were they aligned with a secret purpose in mind?
It's very important where the pyramid of Khufu is built, the Great Pyramid. And it's very important where Stonehenge is built.
There are several great circles that ancient monuments are aligned with. And in some cases, ancient and modern development is aligned with. Extending the alignment from Boston to the northeast towards Europe, the alignment crosses over the Atlantic and crosses into England and crosses over Stonehenge, which of course is one of the more significant monuments, certainly in England and arguably anywhere.
Can it be coincidental that the early colonists built these 5 cities in perfect alignment with each other and in perfect alignment with Stonehenge? Allison admits that many of the ancient monuments are aligned on ley lines or great circles within a fraction of 1 degree, a distance that sometimes equals 15 or 20 miles. But in the link between the Old World and the New, there is a 0 deviation between the 5 American cities and England's mysterious Stonehenge. According to Allison, they are perfectly aligned. Can such a perfect alignment be unintentional, or the result of some natural attraction of ley lines in the earth?
There's some dispute about that amongst people who studied these ley lines as to whether the builders were aware of an attraction and they built it for that reason, or whether there was possibly an attraction that they were unaware of, but nonetheless caused them to build these sites in alignment. But the simple fact is they are aligned.
But the evidence continues. America's capital city, Washington, D.C., is said to be positioned on the 77th meridian west, considered a sacred location referred to as God's longitude. In his book, Marking Time, author Duncan Steele argues that the early expedition of Sir Walter Raleigh, known for the lost colony at Roanoke, was not quite the failure it seemed to be. Raleigh's intent, according to Steele, was not really to establish a colony, but rather to capture God's longitude by locating the 77th meridian.
The goal of the occultist who understands these concepts is to have things exist within the sacred harmonies of the earth. And if indeed they believe that the 77th meridian was somehow very sacred, then it would be incredibly important for them to plant their flag there.
In Washington, D.C. is even found Meridian Hill, said to mark the precise location of the sacred longitude. Raleigh himself was a member of Bacon's secret society in England. Was he sent on a mystical journey so that America might be designed according to esoteric principles from the beginning? and how many others came ashore as a result of the Baconian influence.
The Rosicrucians came ashore very early on in the founding of the New World. The Masons were also there from the beginning, and I think from very early on, this if you will, cartel, this occult cartel of various groups, basically had it as their goal to establish a society on this continent that was wholly given over to esoteric goals.
The Rosicrucian Order, with its modern headquarters in San Jose, California, has for centuries been linked to Freemasonry.
Well, you have to understand that Freemasonry is simply the modern-day manifestation of the ancient mystery religions. The ideas of Masonry have been around literally for thousands of years. And of course, Rosicrucianism was simply a forerunner of modern-day Masonry.
The order takes its name from its primary symbol, the rose and cross. Like Masonry, the Rosicrucians traced their religion to the mysteries of ancient Egypt. Their power base in San Jose centers around an Egyptian museum.
There are chapters of the Rosicrucians studying every place across America. And one only has to go up on the internet, and they actually have websites where they recruit people into the Rosicrucian order. People have no idea that these people are even here.
Perhaps the reason for their lack of exposure is that they are dwarfed by the chief of all secret societies, the ancient order of Freemasonry. Nevertheless, the Rosicrucians are said to be the first of the secret orders to have opened a door in the New World.
The very first that we know of occult beachhead in America was Rosicrucian. I was out on a speaking tour recently, and I had the opportunity to visit the Ephrata Cloister, it's called, in Ephrata, Pennsylvania. And it's where the original Rosicrucian community built its headquarters, right on the east coast of the United States. And that was in the 1600s. And right about the same time that Christianity was establishing its beachhead in America, so was the Rosicrucian order.
In the 16th century, Sir Francis Bacon had become the chief of the Rosicrucians in England. Researchers believe that Bacon sent members of this society to America to launch his esoteric empire, the New Atlantis. This 1910 Newfoundland stamp commemorates Bacon's early influence. It reads, "Lord Bacon, the guiding spirit in the colonization scheme."
I know that Rosicrucianism today holds Bacon in highest esteem as an active transmitter of the secrets. If you go to the AMORC, the Ancient Mystical Order of the Rose and the Cross, the Rosicrucian Order Center in San Jose, Bacon is everywhere. He's a demigod in Rosicrucianism.
But Bacon's influence was not confined to Rosicrucianism. He is considered by some to have been the first to formalize the mystery teachings into a system now recognized as modern Masonry.
So Freemasonry up to that point had been very, very much involved with just the craft of building buildings. It had been a guild in this country, and each country had their own type of masonry or Freemasonry. There was no sense of it being a worldwide fraternity where religious belief or race did not matter. Before that, it had been very racial and very religious, but Bacon turned it into a truly international society.
This international society would also come to the New World. And while Bacon's Rosicrucians would maintain a position of careful anonymity, the Order of Masonry would stretch its hands in America to the very heights of power. Nowhere is the Masonic presence more clearly seen than in the design of America's capital city, Washington, D.C.
yes, Washington, D.C. is completely based on Masonic architecture.
The whole architecture is laid out in an occult manner with Masonic symbology. Every major building in Washington, D.C. has a Masonic plaque on it. I mean, the Masons have permeated, and the other secret societies have permeated our society since the very beginning.
In his book, The Secret Architecture of Our Nation's Capital, author David Oveson confirms the esoteric influence of Masonry in the design and building of Washington, D.C. Oveson reveals the occult ceremonies surrounding the laying of the city's cornerstone, a ritual that involved the father of the nation, George Washington. 200 years later, in a ceremony commemorating this event, Senator Strom Thurmond, himself a 33rd degree Mason, is pictured alongside the cornerstone upon which is carved a Masonic square and compass.
If you either look at the map of Washington, D.C. or try and drive in Washington, D.C., you think it must have been designed by a nutcase. But actually it was designed by a Freemason, a French Freemason named L'Enfant. I think Pierre Charles L'Enfant was his name. And it's full of esoteric symbolism.
Oveson writes that, like the pyramids of Egypt, the entire city was built in alignment with the stars, and suggests that the hidden purpose for the Masonic rituals is that America might be empowered by the gods of the ancient world. Can this be the reason for the pagan god and goddess images that have come to represent America? Tradition often claims that America was founded as a Christian nation only. But if this is the case, why are its symbols those of the pagan religions rather than images of Christ, the apostles, and stories from the Bible?
Well, I think that this is where the great confusion comes in. America was founded as a Christian nation, but it was also founded as an occult nation. And there have always been two parallel forces here in America. One the Christian, one the occult, dating back into the 1600s. And until you understand that, you can't understand anything going on in the world today.
The conflict between Christianity and the occult has compelled some to reject entirely the influence of God in early America. In February of 2005, CBSNews.com posted an article titled Our Godless Constitution. In it, author Brooke Allen wrote that our nation was not founded on Christian principles, but on Enlightenment ones. God only entered the picture as a very minor player, and Jesus Christ was conspicuously absent. A chief issue of debate are the very symbols that define the United States. Where did they come from, and what or who exactly do they represent? For many, the answers lie in the secret societies.
I mean, you can see their influence on the back of the Great Seal of the United States, where in 1782 they put on a pyramid capped by an all-seeing eye with the slogan beneath, Novus Ordo Seclorum, the new secular order of the world. That was in 1782. It was put on the back of the Great Seal of the United States, hidden there until about 1935, when it was taken off the back of the Great Seal of the United States and put on the back of the American dollar bill, where it is today, symbolizing the influence of the secret societies on America. And you know, there are some of our Christian ministries that want to tell you that a cult symbol is a Christian symbol. It just goes to show how effectively the Christians have been misled, and they've been misled intentionally by people who've infiltrated the Christian movement and have told them, oh, this is a Christian symbol. Well, where in Christian symbology do you come up with a pyramid? Where in Christian symbology do you come up with a glorified eye light? This is all the symbology that everybody who's involved with the occult understands.
The glorified or all-seeing eye is known as the Eye of Horus, one of the most important gods of the Egyptian mysteries. Other pagan icons include the Washington Monument, an obelisk normally dedicated to the Egyptian sun god. Meanwhile, the idea for the Statue of Liberty was taken from the Colossus of Rhodes, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and combined with the imagery of the goddess of ancient Babylon, Queen Semiramis. But what do these esoteric elements tell us about the founding fathers of America? Who were they, and what was the light by which they saw the world and themselves in it?
The majority of the people who were in the founding fathers were either deists, or else they were free thinkers, or they were Rosicrucians, or they were Masons, or they were all of the above.
But the issue is not black and white. Researchers are careful to point out the God-fearing nature of early Americans.
If we take the founding of America as the time when the Puritans came over, if that's the time that was taken, and the landing of the Pilgrims, you remember, and that date there, if that was taken as the founding of America, there was no question. These are solid Christians, out, and they were looking for freedom. They did not want to be persecuted by either the church in England, which was the Anglican Church. So the Puritans